Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Serious Strategy Gamer and we are returning to a Kaiserreich Let's Play. So last time I played Germany, unfortunately that was interrupted by the mod getting an update. This is of course for Hearts of Iron 4. So we're going to play a new game over here and we're going to select our country on the map. And that is going to be Mongolia. So I thought about playing in China, but honestly it's such a weird situation down there that it's relatively complicated and I don't want to get too much into it. Maybe at some point. But, you know, we are going to play as the Mad Baron Roman von Ungern-Sternberg. I do heavily encourage you to read his bio here on the right, so do pause the game maybe and have a look at that because he's a funny guy. He's like traveled all over the place. He's now in control over Mongolia. That control is a little bit tenuous though. There are going to be a couple of things that we need to address over here, but let's get into the game and start loading this up. Of course, one of the big changes that the game made is that China's not so long under control over the German Empire anymore, so that's going to be alright. So, here we go. This is Mongolia. These are our troops. Of course, let's just grab them over here, get a new army group, and that's going to be alright. So, of course, our field marshal here is going to be ourselves. And honestly over here, I think this gentleman here is fine. Of course, we do have a little bit of cavalry, and this is going to be a very cavalry-driven playthrough over here of Mongolia. Because, of course, we do want to form the new Khanate and just expand a little bit. So for those of you who don't know, Kaiserreich is an alternative history version of Hearts of Iron 4. Hearts of Iron 4 is of course based in the 1930s, 60s, addressing world history, I would say. Of course, mostly World War II. Now, in this alternative timeline, Germany has won World War I, and basically the rest of the world has fragmented in many different and extremely interesting ways. So we've had a couple of Let's Plays here with India, with the United Kingdom, and the one that I just mentioned with Germany. Now, a lot of things will be different, and we're going to focus a little bit on the most immediate surroundings of Mongolia for this little Let's Play. There is the Russian Republic, so not the Soviet Union, but this is a more or less democratic thing over here with President Kerensky. He's currently very fond of us in Mongolia, and he is giving us some benefits that we can see over here. So consumer goods, factories, construction speed, these are not that important, but they're nice to have. Unfortunately, that will not hold. So in most Let's Plays I tried, this gentleman here gets assassinated and Russia will fragment in interesting ways. Down here, China is, as you can see, very fragmented as well. Very many different things. They're also extremely interesting to read, all of these guys, but we're going to watch that a little bit. We have got the Germans down here, or at least Germany is Asia, so one of their, let's say, colony states. And we have, interestingly enough, I think the American Trade Federation over here, the legendary legation cities. Alright, so yeah, all of that is very interesting, but again, we are landlocked, we're going to be over here in Mongolia, and we have stuff to address. So let's go for the research slot. We don't even have basic infantry equipment over here, so I think we are going to just research this. That's going to be alright. Then we could go for either industry, or, you know what, I think actually land doctrine would be a little bit better. And since we are the Khanate, so the Great Horde, we could either go for mass assault doctrine, or on the other hand for mobile warfare doctrine, but because division speed is something I would very much like to see. I don't think there's anything specifically for cavalry anywhere in these things, so you know what, we're just going to go for mobile warfare because I like the division speed bonus here. That should be pretty much okay. So yeah, we do want to have blitz tactics just with horses. Right, of course we do have a couple of free civilian factories. We do have very few military factories. We can build up exactly 2 over here, so that's going to be what it has to be. We are a little bit short on material, but you know what, there's nothing that we can do in that regard because we don't have that many factories to trade them away. And we can't do that much about our low infrastructure either. Let's have our people train up a little bit just so that they do gain a little bit of experience, and that should be fine. So that basically deals with the setup. For those of you who are playing a little bit of Hearts of Iron 4, you will notice we don't have National Focus set unlocked yet because, well, we can't select a National Focus. All of these guys are unlocked because the game does consider us to be in a very much political crisis. And that is going to be apparent once we start the game over here. So, of course, you know, this guy is a foreigner. He's an adventurer. He came in and took over Mongolia. And of course there are incumbent states that don't want to give up their power that easily. So, ooh, we do have an airport. I didn't even realize we do have that. And we do have transport planes only. So we could think about at some point researching at least basic fighters. Well, let's park that decision for now. Right, and let's start the timing over here because nothing much interesting is going to happen immediately. So that's fine. Here is the introduction to Mongolia. Let's briefly read through this. Mongolia was ruled by the Qing dynasty for centuries. It wasn't until the Shanghai Revolution in 1911 where Mongolia declared their independence from China. However, the new Republic of China still claimed Outer Mongolia as Chinese territory. This independence was shattered in 1919 when Chinese troops under whoever occupied Mongolia due to fears of Russian invasion. However, in late 1920, white Russian leader Roman von Ungern-Sternberg, leading his Asiatic Cavalry Division, moved into Ugra and supported by Buddhist religion leader the Bogd defeated the Chinese. Ungern restored the Bogd Khan as leader of the nation and enforced his leadership with an iron fist. He could not rule the nation alone, however, and had to pander to the Mongolian aristocrats and nobles to gain support. Ungern faced resistance primarily from socialist rebels who founded the Mongol Arid Nam in 1920. In 1921, the socialists decided to rebel to try to remove Ungern from power. After much fighting, Ungern was able to keep the hold of the nation, and the Mongol Arid Nam was forced into hiding. They remained active, however, and rebelled once again in 1924, following the death of Bogd Khan. Declaring Ungern's authority to rule illegitimate, this revolution failed once again and led to the death of multiple high man members, primarily due to de facto leader whoever. With this death, the group was once again forced to go into hiding. Following the death of the Bogd Khan, or the 8th, whatever, come on, these names, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Ungern ruled as regent while trying to find the 9th leader, the most important person in Mongolia for Tibetan Buddhism. When he was found in 1933, he was brought to Ungern to be pruned to eventually lead when he's old enough. Following the purge of multiple lamas in 1930, however, Buddhists in government decided to form the Budun Savul, a circle of Buddhist fanatics led by the 7th guy, one of the most important people in Tibetan Buddhism. They fear that Ungern will never relinquish his power as regent until his death, and fear that he is leading Mongolia away from the ideals of Buddhism. So, that does set it up. Mongolia is a dangerous place. Ungern was able to negotiate, yada yada. You cannot read all of that. So we have internal threats that we need to deal with, and we also need to deal with the Marklik. So for many years now, border skirmishes have gone endlessly between Mongolia and Marklik troops. Much of Inner Mongolia is under Mark control, and they know their power is under threat. The border between Marklik and Tibet is in a similar situation. Yushu province has been taken and taken back multiple times over the years, and for now it's under Mark control. However, with tension growing, it is potentially time for war. So, Marklik is our principal external enemy. They are in fractions against Tibet and against Mongolia, which is of course us. So, you know what, I do also want to let's take all of the other troops here into different armies so that these guys here are only our cavalry troops, and that should be alright. And then you guys here can be under this gentleman, and that should also be okay. Great. Right, so what I want to do is, let's have all of them around. Let's resume time and wait for the events on the internal political strife. You can see a couple of Russian troops there. And here we go, assassin of President Kerensky. That is, I'm not sure whether it's scripted or whether there's a chance, but it happens a lot. So Russia did lose its president, and that is not great. Especially it's not great for us because we were reliant on the Russian support, and yeah, this is pulled into question, and probably they are going to stop giving us assistance, and there we go. We are losing also a little bit of base stability. Not great. And this might be one of the kicking points where, you know, that stable protectorate, let's say, of Russia is falling away from Mongolia, and that might ignite some of the internal strifes. Totalist Charter, not that important for us, of course, right now. You can read through it. It's basically saying that the the left and the right are moving closer towards each other and just forming an unholy alliance, if you want. So, Jarl Lama's bandits spotted in Western Mongolia. Mongolia is a nation regularly plagued by banditry and raiding. Due to the sheer size of the nation compared to its minimal population, it is difficult to find these bandits and bring them to justice. However, following Unger's ascension to power in 1921, he clamped down on any resistance, sending his forces out in the deepest areas of Mongolia to root out bandit groups. The brutality of Ungern's forces had become rather famous in Mongolia, mercilessly torturing and killing any bandits, criminals or resistance fighters they found. Many bandits went into hiding for fear of being executed by what they have known as Unger's death squads. However, over the years, Unger has been having more and more trouble in keeping Mongolia in his grips. MAN rebels are regularly disrupting supply lines, and bandit activity has been growing more and more, especially in the west, where our troops are spread very thin. With Russian money, we were able to put down the bandit forces, sometimes even through bribery. However, with Russia declaring that their aid to us will be halted, many bandit groups seem to be coming out of their caves, most notably Jarl Lama's Rice base bandits. He was an independence fighter and warlord back in the 1910, who, after murdering all of the envoys who we sent to him, went into hiding. With Russian aid leading to an inability to keep control of these western regions, has decided to come back out of the cracks. So the western region of us is having some troubles. Edward is crowned as King of Britain, which is of course not the UK, but actually only in Canada these days. Bandits raid a village, which is obviously pretty bad, so that is somewhere in western Russia. We are losing a little bit of stability. The Social Democrats, which is not us, do gain a little bit of support, so that's not great, and the event tells us it's a one-time thing. It probably isn't. Spoiler alert there. Right. So I know all of this because I had a very, very brief look into here, just to see what would await us. Bandits defeat local militia, so there is more raids, we are losing base stability, and everything goes down in... I do encourage you to read that. I'm not going to read all of them, but please do pause the game if you want to read them. But yeah, there is basically a little bit of low intense warfare, I would say, in the western part of our country. That is not great. There's a war between Afghanistan and India, not that important for us right now, but yeah, we'll have to deal with that. Who cares about Afghanistan? Right. And here we go. So on the one hand we have the Black Monday. On 3rd of February 1936 the Berlin Stock Exchange stopped sinking, it plunged. So there we go. Mein Gott, there is the World War crisis. But more importantly for us, the Western Rebellion. The situation is much worse than first expected. It seems that it was not only bandits that returned to Mongolia, many are just people who hate Ungern's dictatorial leadership. But there are also other factions involved. Extreme Buddhist monks have radicalized many of the peasants who now rise up against us. Others have joined the Mongol Ardinam, a revolutionary socialist group. Following their failed revolutions in 1921 and 1924, the group went into hiding, but in the chaos they see now as the time to rise up once again. Thankfully, all of the groups oppose each other just as much as they oppose Ungern, so there's much infighting. In the western cities of Kharkov and Unguli, rebels rose up and charged into the government building, killing our mayors and declaring that Ungern's rule is illegitimate. Although their force is small and compared to our full army, the chaos this rebellion will cause will give Ungern's opponents in Ugra the chance to dismantle Ungern's regime. So, we're going to lose a lot of base stability and war support, a little bit of political power, and we are going to gain several negative results. So our army is going to be pushed out of this region over here. I think they're going to go down here to this area. You know what, we might actually, set you guys up here in the border against Mongolia. That should be okay. And you guys are going to be garrisoning this, all of this? Yeah, let's say all of this. That I think should be fine. There we go. So we now have this thing, and you can see a decision is made available to us. Specifically, let's ignore army reform, let's ignore the political actions here. The most important one is the Western Rebellion. So we could reinforce our troops in the West. We could make the offer, so do something to reduce their, or just try to bribe them. Or we could transfer the garrison from over here. This I don't think I want. I want to keep my areas stable, at least where they are stable for now, and you know, just try to contain that. So I don't think that is something that we want. Make the offer. I'm also kind of not that interested in bribing our way through this, because I don't think that's going to be extremely possible. So let's ignore this here for now, and that should be okay. Ooh. Poland declares the Republic, and Italy is doing something as well, so that's okay. What other events do we have over here that are available to us? Army reform? No, I don't think so, any. MAN rebels defeat us at Ottogon. After sending in some of our troops to retake town of Ujru that had been previously taken by MAN rebels, so that's the socialists, they armed the peasants of Ottogon with as many guns as they could get. Bolstered by bandit sympathetics to their cause, they threw up some small fortifications and prepared for our assault. Following some of our troops defecting to the rebels, our forces were crushed by the insurgents. News of the socialist victory travels fast across the country, being romanticized as a heroic battle against Ungarn's evil death squads. Obviously not that great. So let's look at the political situation. We've got the Ungarn loyalists at 41% over here. We are considered paternal autocrats. We've got the MAN, Social Democrats, 29%. And we've got, I think, the Buddhists over here, the Authoritarian Democrats, at 20%. And... well, are these the Buddhists and these are the aristocrats? I don't know. Something along these lines. Decisions available. Let's reinforce our troops in the west. That does give us a little bit more political power, and it's gaining base stability and war support, so I think that's a great idea. And hopefully that's gonna be alright. Good, our troops down here are over there. The illusion of Qing hegemony shatters. The facade of Chinese unity, having held together for nearly a decade, has begun to crumble. Rising unrest in the League of Eight Provinces, the economic shock of Black Monday, pretending German retrenchment, and the inability of the national government to deliver a decisive response to either has made one thing clear. Beijing's monopoly on power is broken. So China is definitely going to descend into civil war at some point, but unfortunately we are not quite in a position to profit from that. We could try to, of course, do something over there, but our forces are fairly weak anyway for now, so yeah, there's not really any way how we could do that. Interestingly enough, the Nanying Clink over here has declared war on some of the things over there. Dimishudru meets with other autocratic council. Over the past weeks, the aristocrats, under the de facto leadership of the prince, have been increasing their activity, having many meetings and speaking to many in our government. Perhaps they are just fearful of the Western rebellion. However, it is no secret that they disdain Ungarn and his Russian-dominated leadership, and so perhaps these meetings have a great importance. So, authoritarian Democrats, that's these guys, that's the... come on, that's the, oh dear, just look at China. Yeah, that's what I said, it's splintering so fast, you know, with all of these cliques. Nanying clique has been splintered again. So this is a very, very weird, many ways sort of fighting. So yeah. Anyway, we have to deal with our own stuff. The Buddhists demand we allocate funds to repair raided monasteries. The Buddhists, who we suspect are directly funding the Buddhist extremists in the West, have demanded that we allocate funding to be used to repair our monasteries in the West. The group have very large influence in our government due to many of our officials being active members. However, the amount of funding they demand is ridiculous, and we will be unable to raise it by ourselves. So we cannot spare the money, lose base stability, but the national populists, so these guys over here, would gain some party support. We could set aside some funds, lose political power, or tax the nobility, and that would give rise to more authoritarian Democrat support. Now, there are going to be a lot of events like this, and we have to balance a couple of things over here. So firstly, we want to make sure that Ungarn loyalists are going to stay the most dominant party over here. So we need to make sure that these guys here don't rise too much, and we'll have to carefully balance our way through that and just make sure that we are not going to get too dominated by any one party, except of course the paternal autocrats. So if we did this over here, national populism, these guys would rise a little bit. The other thing that we do need to keep in mind is our base stability, because I want to maintain that to the degree possible. We are already getting a couple of negative effects over here, like political power gain and so on. So it would be great if we are not falling too low on base stability. So losing base stability of 5% it's a little bit unfortunate. I don't mind that much the increase in the support for the Buddhists. They are currently the weakest party anyway, so we could increase them at least a little bit. But on the other hand, 5% is pretty high, so we are going to set a little bit aside. That means we are losing a little bit of political power, but since we are not gaining, since we are not using any national focus, which in fact we can't, we are gaining a lot of political power per day actually, so that's going to be alright. Death of Pius 2, we don't really care about the Pope that much, so that's alright. Here's the next event. Group of bandits in the west have completely destroyed a local city, raiding for food and money and so on and so forth. So we could again say this is not our problem. We'd be losing party support, we'd be gaining base stability. We could lose a little, we could seize the nobles' money. That would of course increase the support for the nobles, because we are seen as treating them not that nicely. Or we could secretly cooperate with the socialists, and that would give increased support for the socialists and ourselves, but more for them than for us, and they are currently our biggest competitor. But it would increase base stability and political power. So you know what, we're gonna do this, which means they're gonna gain a little bit over here and we're gonna lose a little bit, I think, overall. So we need to be extremely careful about these guys, but overall I think that's gonna be a fine decision because base stability is increased. Chaos in the capital. Due to the conflict in the west of the nation, most of our generals and army leaders have been forced to leave the capital. A large amount of these army officers and generals are extremely loyal to Ungarn, due to the large amount of money Ungarn spends on the armed forces, and the fact that the officer class is dominated by Russians who remained with Ungarn after the civil war ended in the north. This loyalty is one of the main reasons Ungarn has been able to stay in power for so long. The problem for Ungarn is clear, with most of the loyalists leaving Ugra to go to the west. Opposing political factions are seeing their chance to act. The MAN party have always had decent support in the capital, although being illegal, and many of the peasants hold sympathies to them. Both the Budunsurul, so the Buddhists, and the aristocrats have great influence in the government and stand ready to move in and take over, given the chance. Ungarn must walk a fine line between the factions if he is going to survive. Chaos in the capital decisions, not that great. Loss in party loyalship to us, so that's not that great either. So we need to be mindful about what we can do over here. So we could fight resistance, which would increase our support. Oh, we should pause the game. We could crack down on the MAN. Not that bad either, but all of these are going to decrease our base stability, so that's not that great. We could increase radical socialism. We could cede power. This is not something that we're going to do. Could again, of course, reinforce our troops in the west, and I think that might be a very good idea. There's also the question whether we want to do any of this. So the issue here is this would decrease base stability, whereas this here does nothing of the sort, but it's still decreasing party support for some of our enemies. Although not honestly for the most important enemies. These guys are at 20%. I'm mostly worried about the Social Democrats at this point. At 32%, they are only a little bit behind us. We could, of course, also saw discord in between their ranks, but that would also decrease base stability, so I'm a little bit loathsome to do that. On the other hand, this would flat out increase our support. So you know what, let's reinforce our troops in the west for now and not gonna place anything else, because that again would increase base stability and give us more support over here, so that's great to see as well. Something about the Pope, we don't care. Monasteries destroyed in a siege and in a large battle. Some fanatic Buddhist fighters retreated back to their monasteries nearby. Our forces chased after them, and the battle continued at the monastery. By the end of the fighting, the building had mostly collapsed. Most of the monks were killed, and to make matters worse, some of our men stole most of their valuables and supply. After hearing this news, the Buddhists are demanding that we once again pay to rebuild and repair the broken monastery. Well, what can we do? So, we could seize the noble wealth, we could try to splash out a little bit of political power again. That would again put us into negative things, and I don't really want that because it would be great to keep on being able to reinforce these things and just try to keep control of the situation. So, honestly, I think at this point we might seize the nobles' wealth. That's also going to cost us a little bit of political power. But honestly, it's a 25% difference, and it's only going to lead to an increase of their power of 2%. And there are no repercussions on our stability. So you know what, we're going to do that. Increase this party a little bit. It's not a threat right now, so I think that's going to be fine. Good. Right, so Russian troops on the border. I don't care about that too much. An Inkling clique has apparently won their civil war, at least that part of the civil war there, so that's okay. Right, and with that we are diving deep into the crisis. We are getting a lot of political power today. That's okay. Rebels take something. After weeks of constant fighting in the west, national troops are beginning to beat the rebels in the steppes. To counter this, it seems the rebels have changed their tactics. They have instead decided to take full control of multiple main cities in the region and hold out for as long as possible. We see this currently with rebel groups currently sieging against our last forces in Ulster. Another example of this is Kembaldur, the current capital of Tuva. This over here. A few weeks ago, a small detachment of rebels travelled across the western steppes to Kembaldur, where they quickly were able to defeat the small garrison in the city. With control over this city, they have effective control of the Turin province, and we will have to take it back before we are able to finally defeat these rebels. Damn. Game-based ability minus 5%, Tuva becomes a demilitarized zone, state is no longer a core of Mongolia. That's bad. Let's make sure that... Okay, let's... So we are going to be kicked out of this province, which is of course not great. But we do have additional decisions, so we could re-invade this. I think I want to have at least 25 political power because I don't know exactly what this does over here. On the other hand, we could also then try to reinforce our troops in the west. Maybe do that before that, so that I think would be good. Rebels occupy Ulistai. Finally, the rebels have been able to take Ulster from loyalist forces. As a main stronghold in the west, we must take it back before we are able to prove ourselves as the legitimate government. So, another big down over here, so that's not great. Electoral gridlock in Great Britain, we don't care about that much. So, let's get to this decision over here, and you know what, at that point, failed coup in Beijing. Details are unclear, but following a presumed coup attempt in the Forbidden City this morning, Marshal Wu Pefei emerged, arm in a sling, but otherwise standing tall. Walking down the stairs, he stopped for a few words with reporters, who had rushed to the scene, as Pujie, bound and guarded by a group of soldiers, shuffled out. Right, so more trouble in China down there. Now, let's get to this point. So we can do a couple of things over here. We do have enough political power to address this. Maybe we're going to wait just a couple more days to decide to either invade over here or deal with this siege. I think we're going to try to stabilize the situation in the north, try to contain this before we move into the south. And then we're going to have to see. Right. I think this is a fabulous place to put in a cut. Let's briefly look at all of these guys. You know what? You're trained up well enough. Let's briefly check on... Yeah, we do have a lot of army equipment on the other hand. So that's alright. So you know what? You might as well train further. So, that being said, this is a good place to put in a cut. Do let me know whether you like the series, whether you what you wish for Mongolia, and whether we should go for an all-cav army, which is what I'm thinking right now, and just try to rule the steppe. And what else I should be mindful about, because this is about as far as I know the game. So at some point probably we have to deal and expand in the south. Maybe try to find a spot in the Chinese Civil War, whether we can profit from that. But of course the main priority here is to stabilize our own country first and then see what's going to happen. Also with Russia, right now they're not in a civil war yet, but you know, just as well that might break out. So, let's see. Also, do leave a like and all of that tremendously helps out for a new series. And I'm looking forward to see you guys again next time. Bye bye.